Number 5 is pretty easy, but if you look at the text, it's a little bit sad. Thou tender trailing ivy, why creeps so low thy branches green? Oh, thou damsel young and dainty, why is so sad thy mien? And it just compares the ivy, drooping ivy to the mood of this young damsel. But the music is pretty straightforward, right? So this is a rather dark piece, right? But I want to actually look at the next one, which is number 8, I believe. Now, when these are waltzes, it's actually a slight misnomer because they're what are called Ländlers, and it's a very special dance. And it has what we call a little bit of a lilt. And one of the things that Brahms is very famous for is playing around with the rhythms where the beats are, and also the harmonies. And so we're going to be looking at this piece and number 11, sort of the idea of how he plays with the harmonies. Rhythms. So I'm going to start from the beginning, and I'm going to play the voice parts. But I want you to raise your hand when you hear something funny with the beat. So this isn't 3, and it's sort of a waltz. So it's a 1. So this is the left hand. That's pretty easy, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so when you listen to the music, I'm going to play the first line and then the chorus. I want you to try to think of when the rhythm, the beat, feels like it changes, okay? I'll repeat. So immediately there, we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Does anybody know where that is? If you show up with your finger, oh, actually, you know what? I can hear your voices.
Hello.
And so you can do it by word or by measure number if you count them. But what is, and feel free to just call it out because I'm in, I can't see you all. I don't see you in the box mode.
Okay. Measure 7 to 8.
Yeah, measure 7, 8. And so again, I'll play from the beginning, but this time I'll count. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, sorry, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And you see that? At the end of that first line, tam, pam, ba, ba, ba. And the left hand, sorry, the piano has almost the same thing. Okay, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And that's called a hemiola. It was very, very prominent in Baroque music to sort of signify the end of a phrase. And then by the time you got to Mozart and Beethoven, that really wasn't in the style anymore. And so the fact that Brahms brings this out again is really sort of hearkening back to that era. So if you look on the next page, page 21, and if I'm going to start from page 21, the second system, second bar, nimmer wird. You see that? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And the way he plays around with where the beats are, if you're dancing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, it might really throw you off. And so that's where Brahms takes a traditional form of the Ländler waltz. He harkens back to the Baroque era, and he creates something that of its time is both old and new, right? And so this is a really interesting sort of rhythmic play. He also does that at the beginning of the Gesang der Parzen. And so if you look at that work, which is a larger work, and on the first page, the Song of the Fates, you'll see that this is this very long introduction. I'm going to play a little bit of this now. We're actually going to hear the orchestra in the wider rehearsal, but I wanted to play this on piano because it highlights some of the rhythmic instability between the orchestra players. And then the chorus comes in, this incredibly introduction. And the women, dee, dee. It's really almost very terrifying. And obviously we'll talk about the way Brahms approached his choral symphonic works very differently. But I want you to look at the third system in the first page. And second system, second bar. And what Brahms does is he changes between triplets and duple. We say compound versus duple beats. Compound is a division of the beat into 3, like a waltz. We say 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. While duple, as you know, is division of the beat into 2 beats. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And so we can keep the beat the same, but the division of the beats changes. So let's try saying 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So 2 beats of compound beat, and 2 beats of duple. Again, that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. Let's try that. And 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. And the goal always is to keep the beat the same, but the divisions of the beat different, right? But what Brahms does is he does both at the same time. That's why it makes it very unstable and feeling like you're tossed around by the gods, which we'll hear about in a little bit. But I want you to hear at the very beginning and think about whether you think the division of the beat is in 2 or 3, because in the first 2 bars already, he changes it in the middle of it. See if you can tell where that happens. So anybody know in the first, there's a clue I have to tell you, but in the first 2 bars where he changes whether it's a duple beat or a compound beat?
second measure, fourth beat has the triplet mark.
Exactly. And, he gives you a clue because he writes 3 there, right? But it is where, again, gives that feeling of instability. So we have 1 and 2. Ta, T, 1 and 2. And 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. And then it goes into doubles, right? However, look at the second system, second bar. And this is where Brahms becomes really famous, because what he does all the time is put groupings of 2 and groupings of 3 at the same time. So the right hand has 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, while the left hand has 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. And you put them together, you get double, compound, both. And that is one of the key characteristics of rhythmic instability with Brahms, is 3 against 2s. There are so many pieces. We're going to hear them sort of, we heard in the hemiolas, that in very light feeling of messing around where the strong beats are. We hear them in the Song of Fates to create that very, like we said, unstable feeling. And what I want to do is the last thing before I turn it over to Paul to do some sight singing, is I want us to be able to do 2 and 3 at the same time. So what I want you to do is on your left hand, go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Great. And your right hand, you're going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Now, every musician in school has had to do this. And so what they do is, so the key is, if you hear what we call the aggregate rhythm, tut, 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 it helps you. So just try to say that, tut, 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 tut. And so we say sometimes 1 cup of tea, 1 cup of tea, 1 cup of tea, 1, try this out, and 1 cup of tea, 1 cup of tea, 1 cup of tea, 1 cup of tea. So you can try that. I'm starting to bleed into Paul's time, but I'll do a little slowly. Together, left, right, left. Together, left, right, left. Together, right, left. Together, left, right, left. And then you get, and then what you can do is, see if you can keep one hand by itself, right? And then the other hand. And then, it's easier if it's a little faster, but then you can work on 1 cup of tea, 1 cup of tea, 1 cup of tea, 1 cup of tea. So that could be some homework for you to try. Now, the next version of this, as Julie and Paul can attest, is 4 against 3. And because we're all adults here, the rhythms words that we say is pass the goddamn butter, pass the goddamn butter. Pass the goddamn butter. And so you can work on that and try that yourself. So again, just to recap, Brahms, when we have that idea, wow, this sounds like Brahms, one of the things you might be hearing is this sort of rhythmic confusion of trying to change what you feel like should happen next, either in groups of 2s or 3s or both of them together. So Paul, I'm going to pass it on to you, but we're going to do some sight singing and some vocal stuff with Paul.
Very good. Thank you, Ming. Oh. Yeah, making sure I'm not joining the audio there. So I'm really excited to work on some sight singing with you all. Over the years, I've heard so many people say, gosh, I wish I could, I'm just not a good sight reader. I can't sing or I can't sight sing. And they talk about it as though it's not something that we can improve, like it's an immutable characteristic or something. It's like me saying, God, I really wish I were 6 feet tall. You know, I can kind of change that, right? I can't change that. I can't be 6 feet tall as much as I might want to be. But sight reading is something that we can really improve in a short period of time. So what I hope to do over the next 4 weeks is work with you all and get to, you know, we're all in different levels in sight reading, and so I'm hoping that we can improve just a little bit in that time. By way of introduction, I would like to point out that with sight singing, it's a very different discipline than what we do in BCCO generally. We might sight sing once or twice at the beginning of a semester, but from that point on, we're doing more deep thought and analysis when we work on a piece. Whereas when you're sight reading, you're really just kind of gathering data and spitting it out. It's a much different process. So people that can be really good at perfecting a piece might not be a good sight reader, and vice versa. You could be a great sight reader, but have real trouble perfecting a piece. So I've made a fancy little PowerPoint presentation for you. Let me get this started here. I hear laughter back there. Please, no laughter.
Oh, no.
Okay, so for most of you, and if not all of you, this is going to be a major review, but I'd like to touch on it anyway. These are some concepts that I really recommend that we learn. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
You can't.
We should for you, your face.
My apologies. I need to share my screen. Sorry. There we go. Okay.
Yes, now we can
Yes.
see.
Now you can see it, yeah? So these are the basics for sight reading. You need to know these things right off the bat, major and minor scales. Now you see here, we do some solfege in here, but for some people, well, most singers, you either love it or hate it. There's very few people that are kind of in the middle here. But let's try singing, and let's go for a better key. How about B flat major? Let's all sing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and up and down. Ready? And do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, ti, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Yes, that sounds very nice. It sounds like you really all know your major scale. Now, do you know, could anybody tell me what solfege syllable you would start on if you were going to sing a minor scale? Not do, not do. If we do a movable do, there are two types of, I don't want to get too much into. La, yes, we start on la. So let's go up here. Let's say this is do. Let's find ti, la. So minor scale, natural minor scale is just la to la. Let's try that together, shall we? Starting on la. 1 and 2. La, ti, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, sol, mi, re, do, ti, la. I'm going to assume that we got that, but just remember that a minor scale starts on la, and a major scale starts on do. And so that you can see the rest of this, you need to know the names of the pitches on the staff, basic rhythmic values, time signatures, and key signatures. We're going to touch on all of these. And again, I realize for most of you, this is probably very much review and maybe even a little dull. I'll try and, spice it up for you a bit. Here we go. So here's the grand staff. You can see the treble clef. The only point that the treble clef touches any line 4 times is on the line of G. And that's how you can tell where G is. And the bass clef, the 2 dots surround the F. So that is how you can find those. And of course, we have these helpful mnemonics here. Face, all cows eat grass. How many of you have seen these before?
I have.
Okay. Well, these are mnemonics people use to know what your pitches are. And by the way, if anybody wants this presentation here, because it is so fancy and I can tell that people love it, I'm happy to send it out to people if there's any use to it. But these are ways to learn the names of the pitches. And moving on, now we go to rhythms. And again, this will not be new, but let's try counting this top line together on ta. So when we sustain a whole note for 4 beats, ta, 2, 3, 4, just sustain it over ta, and sustain each of these for as long as they need to be. I'm sure we've done this with Julia in warm-ups many times, but here's our tempo. 1, 2, here we go. Ta, 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 ta. And we could go on from there. We could go to triplets, ta, 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 or 16ths, ta, 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 ta. But again, I don't want to dig too deeply into that. Shall we count the rests together? Ready, go.
1, 2.
Just kidding. We know how rests sound. They're silent. But just so you see what they look like. Notice, though, the difference between a whole and a half rest. The whole rest is hanging from the second line from the top. I always had a teacher tell me that a whole rest looks like a hole in the ground. And I don't know if that helps you or not. So let's read this the last thing you see there with the 1, 2, 3, 4s. Let's read this together. Just on ta again. We'll go a little slower, about 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ta, 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 ta. Okay, I can tell I'm boring you. You guys nailed that. So you see here now I've got rhythm exercises. Let me just jump out of here. And okay, wait a minute. Okay, can you all see this basic rhythmic practice from Samuel Stokes at samuelstokes.com? You can find this yourself. I want to certainly attribute this to whoever got it. Let's try reading this. We're not going to take any of the repeats, and we're going to go all the way down to the bottom. Notice at bar 17, we have some syncopation. Things get a little bit tricky down there. Now, as much as possible, when sight reading, take a look at that first bar. You see we're in 2/4 time, and we have a half note. As you're singing that note, or in this case, we're going to just be tawing that note. Be looking ahead. As you're singing that first note, be looking at the second bar. As you're singing the second bar, be looking at the third. Your eyes always be scanning ahead. So we're going to start on ta, and we'll go at a pretty good clip, about 1, 2, here we go. Ta, 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 bar 5. Ta, 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 ta. Going ta, 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 ta. Line 4, ta, 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 ta. Ta, 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 Okay, this is really good to know. I can tell that you're already good readers and that this is far too simple. So let's find something a little bit harder, just a little bit. 1 second, please. Okay, that is the Great Western Divide, by the way, in Kings Canyon National Park. I highly recommend you go there. Now, this is going to be a little trickier. So why don't you take a second and just look at some of these. Let's only do the first 4 lines to start, but go ahead and scan it for a sec. We'll take about 5 seconds. All right, let's give it a shot, shall we? 1 and 2. Ta 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 ta. Let's stop there. Okay, so you're doing really great with that. Let's move along. Sorry, folks, I'm new at this. Okay, so now key signatures. Here they are all for you. Just a way to easily figure them out is in sharp keys, take the final sharp and move up a half step. I'm sure that's pretty familiar to all of you. With the flat keys, memorize that one flat is F major. And from that point on, you can take the penultimate flat in the key signature, and that will be the name of the key. So if you look at D flat major, for instance, the second to last flat there is going to be D. And that's true of all of these. So I don't want to take too much time on that because, well, Ming is going to be, or Julie is going to be warming us up soon. Now, intervals is perhaps the most important part in sight reading, in sight singing in particular. And here you have a map of all of these. Now you can see that there's all these enharmonic spellings. You can ignore the enharmonic ones for the most part. But you can see that we have minor second, major third, minor third, all of these different intervals and what they look like. I'd like to spend the remainder of our time here figuring out like what certain intervals sound like. If you've been in a music class ever, in an ear training class, one thing that people do to learn intervals is to think of familiar songs that have that interval in it. And I'm sure a lot of you have done this. So if you have a minor second, which is only a half step, does anybody know a song that starts in a half step? I'll just go ahead and tell you. Anybody recognize that movie?
Jaws.
That's Jaws. Yes. So if you see a song that starts in a half step, think da-dum, ba-dum. How about a major second? This one. What's a song that starts with a major second?
Go, a dear.
Yes, that does. Any other songs? Okay, if I don't hear them right away, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out. Happy birthday, or Frère Jacques, or Silent Night. So those are three songs that you can choose. How about a minor third? This one. Okay.
Green sleeves.
Green Sleeves. Bingo. Any Canadians out there?
Yeah.
Oh, Canada. Yes, that's another one. How about a major third? This one. Oh, when the saints' morning has broke. There's a couple for you. How about perfect fourth? Everyone knows the perfect fourth one.
Here comes the bride.
Here comes the bride. There's a couple others, though. Oh, Christmas tree, or Amazing Grace. So these are all songs. How about a perfect fifth?
NBC.
NBC is coming up, actually. Twinkle, twinkle, or are you going to Scarborough Fifth? Or raindrops on roses. That's another one. Favorite things. And the minor sixth is a really difficult one. That's it. Da-da-ba-da-ba-dum. Major sixth. Somebody said it before.
NBC.
NBC. I don't know if anybody watches NBC anymore, so I'm not sure we should use that. But I heard it. Who sang that?
Me. My
Yes.
name used to be Bonnie.
My Bonnie lies over the ocean. Minor seventh. There's only one song that I can
There's
think.
a place for
There's a
us.
place for us. Brilliant. And how about this one?
Also, West
Maria?
Maria.
Maria. No, Maria is the tritone.
Belly high, belly high.
Yes, Ballet High. And also Fantasy Island actually starts with that, if you all remember Fantasy Island from back in the day. And finally, this one, octave. Yes, exactly, Over the Rainbow. I skipped the tritone, which is either a perfect fourth or a diminished fifth. I heard Maria. What's another one?
The Simpsons.
The Simpsons. Okay, great. So you know all of that stuff. Now, to finish out, because I know I'm running over a little bit here, we'll do these next week, but these are just a few strategies. When you first encounter a piece, I'm going to assume that you have anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute to scan the piece before you start. But these are some things you can do. Check the basics, key signature, time signature, which clefs you are. Check the layout of the piece. Are there any repeats? Is there a DS? Is there a coda? And then are there surprises? Big jumps in register, weird intervals like that would be an augmented octave. That's something that you would probably want to check in on before you tried singing the piece. Any accidentals, changes of rhythm, clef, key signature, all that you can see written here. Then listen to the tonic pitch, which is whatever key it's in, that'll be your tonic. And then go through the piece mentally. And then wherever you have any trouble spots, we can go over the rhythm and the pitch. Let's just look at one before we finish up here. Let's look at number 1. Can anybody recognize what this interval is here? At the very beginning, we go from E to B.
Major fifth.
Well, we call it a perfect fifth, yes, but you're very close. So this is all, what's the key? We have 4 sharps. E major, so here's your starting pitch. Now you see this is all, there are no accidentals. It's a pretty simple rhythm. We start with a fifth, and then everything else is pretty much stepwise. So let's give this first one a read, and then we'll finish it out. We'll go a nice slow tempo, about 1, 2, 3, and 4. No, I'm sorry, I should tell you. Let's just pick a neutral syllable like no, shall we? 1, 2, here we go. No, 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 no. Please sing out. No. Okay, that was very nicely sung. Thank you very much, everybody. Will, it really was instructive to me to hear how good you are at citing. It's quite good. So I'll make sure to come up with a more difficult material for you next week. But I hope this was a good introduction to what we'll be doing for the next month. Thanks, everybody. I'll hand you back to Ming.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. And I'll pass it on to Julia.
Okay, hello. Oh, already I'm
Let me
spotlighted.
stop sharing.
Hello, everybody. And it's good to see you all again.
Yes.
Okay, so I today I'm going to talk about some history about Brahms and some general style things about Brahms, just to get us started. And I have a nice kind of written presentation here, and no PowerPoint. I'm sorry, you'll just have to look at my face. And I do have maybe 1 or 2 like tracks that we might be able to listen to. I did not check that in the sound check, so let's see if it works. But here we go. So as you know, the 3 pieces that we're kind of focusing on for this this summer session here is the Waldesnacht, which is a gorgeous work for a cappella voices, the Liebeslieder Walzer, a collection of dances for 4 voices and 4-hand piano, which is fun, and the Gesang der Parzen, a web movement work for 6-part chorus and orchestra, where uniquely the altos and basses are both split. And each of these pieces showcase the eloquence of Brahms's writing across various instruments and genres. And today we'll talk about Brahms's biography, at least part of his biography, and his general musical style, keeping in mind some things that you can look out for as we begin to learn these selections tonight, and some things that might not be prevalent in the pieces that we're working on as well. And then over the following weeks of the June program, we'll do a kind of a deep dive into each individual selection. So one day we'll go into the Gesang der Parzen, one day into the Liebeslieder Walzer, the 3 that are selected, and then the last day, the Waldesnacht, not necessarily in that order, but so we'll focus on the history of the piece and studying how Brahms's compositional style that we discussed today might come into play in each work. So biography and life. Brahms was born in Hamburg, Germany in 1833 to a seamstress and a professional musician. And his father, the musician, supplied young Brahms with instruments such as the piano, the cello, and the French horn, lots of instruments to start off, and musical nurturing from an early age. And while his father was his first teacher, his talent quickly became apparent and he was put under the tutelage of Eduard Marxsen. Though Brahms clearly had the talent and work ethic to travel and concertize as a performer, which he did do a little bit later in his career, he premiered many of his own works. As he was a young musician, he had a penchant for composition that he could not ignore. So by age 21, he had a sizable catalog of published works already, all mainly instrumental or piano works at this point, and had received personal encouragement from prominent composers such as Liszt and Schumann already at such a young age. A meaningful relationship he developed as a young musician was with violinist Joseph Joachim, which you might remember that name if you've ever kind of looked into Brahms at all. They toured together for a time, they kind of worked on projects together, and they would stay lifelong colleagues and often exchanged artistic advice really throughout their lives. And it was through Joachim that Brahms was introduced to Robert Schumann in a more formal manner. So Joachim gave Brahms a written letter and said, go talk to Schumann, go give this to Schumann, and he'll give you the time of day. So Schumann quickly became a friend and mentor to Brahms, and very, very soon after publicly praised Brahms in a popular music journal of the day, saying he is fated to give expression to the times in the highest and most ideal manner. And Brahms was very understandably daunted by the high expectations that Schumann had suddenly foisted upon his artistic voice, something which I think reflects his perfectionism in his approach to his music. Then in 1854, Robert Schumann attempted suicide. I think we had talked about this before in some previous works that we've studied with Brahms. And Brahms then joined the Schumann household to kind of aid Robert's family while his mentor was placed in an asylum. And during this time, he developed a friendship with Clara Schumann. You might also recognize that name, Robert's wife. Clara was a talented pianist and composer herself, and she would become a close confidant and musical mentor and a fierce romantic interest of Brahms. And while Brahms pined for Clara, and perhaps Clara for Brahms, most likely we think, their relationship never really evolved beyond that of a close friendship, even after Robert's death. And it's generally thought that these kind of unrealized feelings for Clara that Brahms had manifested musically in many of his compositions throughout his life. And we'll go a little bit further into his biography next week as well, because some of the pieces that we're studying are kind of written later in his life as well. So general style thoughts. So while Brahms's lifespan was from 1833 to 1897, so the majority of the 19th century, it overlapped exclusively with the Romantic era, but his musical style could not be characterized as exclusively romantic in a sense. So some themes and cornerstones of the Romantic era include the search for individualism and originality in one's compositions, a growing sense of expressionism, using larger forces in the interest of expressing a story. So that means, employing a larger orchestra with more instruments in different colors and textures to help express the story or the motivic elements, and focus on emotional context and dramatic continuity rather than kind of centering the structure of a form or a work, which was popular in the classic era, right? Structure and form is kind of very important. And the leading style at the time in the Romantic era, upheld by prominent composers such as Liszt and Wagner, was program music. And this was a type of music that centered the narrative, as we just talked about. It centered the narrative, the imagery, and the story within a musical work. And in contrast, not entirely, it's not like black and white contrast, but differently, Brahms was a champion of absolute music, or music composed kind of purely as music and not necessarily intended to represent or illustrate something else, not always. And while there were many aspects of Brahms's style that did exemplify romantic writing, such as chromaticism and part writing in the part writing, as we'll see lots of tonight, colorful harmonic explorations, detailed expressive markings, and long phrases with melodic inventiveness. He studied and emulated more traditional forms of structures of the Baroque and classical styles, as Ming had kind of talked a little bit about earlier with rhythm as well, with the hemiola, for example, and a feeling of unevenness and changing the rhythm a little bit. So some other examples of these structures and styles that he followed from the Baroque and classical eras and styles include counterpoint. So he quickly became an expert at counterpoint, and Karl Geringer, I hope I'm saying that name correct, he was an Austrian-American musicologist, wrote, "For Brahms, the most complicated forms of counterpoint were a natural means of expressing his emotions. As Palestrina or Bach succeeded in giving spiritual significance to their technique, so Brahms could turn a canon into a pure piece of lyrical poetry." I have a musical example, which again, I hope we'll be able to share here over Jack Trip Sound, but we'll see if it works. And if not, I'll give you the information so you can look it up yourself. But this is an example to show you of some of his contrapuntal writing. So Geistliches Lied, has anyone sung that before, Geistliches Lied? That's okay. This is Opus 30, and it was written in 1856. It's a work for mixed choir and organ, and was actually his first composition written for accompanied chorus. And this work is set as a double canon, which means that there are two canons occurring simultaneously. So the tenor part imitates the soprano part 4 beats later at the interval of a ninth, which is unheard of. While the basses similarly will imitate the altos when they enter in this exact same fashion here. So I'm going to try to play this. And as you listen, if this works, even though Brahms kind of focuses on a more academic style, if you will, of structuring music, it doesn't necessarily sound laborious or overworked, but it does have that kind of intended lyrical and spiritual quality to it. So I am going to try to share my screen, but not my sound and Zoom, because this is a version that will show you the score, and then maybe you might be able to hear. Nope. Never mind, because you know what? If I turn up my volume, you're going to get a giant echo. So here's the title, and I want you all to listen to this on your own time. But what I'll show you, actually, I'll kind of scroll through this video so that you can see in the music itself. Okay, so this is the first soprano entrance here, and they sing, "Lass dich nur nichts, nichts," and then the next page is something like "Tro," "Doran." And then notice that the tenor entrance, right, as we talked about, does the exact same thing here. Starting down here, "Lass dich nur nichts, nichts dauern." Like, it has the exact same movement here as you're singing through. Same thing with the alto line. Notice how it's moving up here, and the bass line kind of follows, right? So there are two canons here happening, and it's a very melodic and lyrical kind of sound here, very expressive. And even though, as I mentioned, it does have this kind of academic quality to it, when we talk about it like that, it's not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily sound at all like technical or anything like that. Ignacio, I see your message. Can you, is it possible to play, I heard a beautiful sound there. Is it possible?
Not Brahms.
Okay, Ignacio is going to see if he can play. Maybe just play the first minute or so once we hear the first phrase. Yes, here we go. Okay. I'll scroll through so you can see the music as well. applause there, but you can hear just how lyrical and gorgeous that is, even though it has, kind of, as I mentioned, an academic kind of start here. So I know that we're running over time a little bit, so just kind of one last thing, I'll skip over some other things that I had planned, but just kind of a final detail here is even though, as we talked about, although Brahms' music was kind of rooted in more traditional structure and kind of emulating older styles, Baroque and classical structure and forms and compositional techniques, many of the elements of his style that we mentioned earlier, such as phrase lengths and harmonic progressions and melodic context, expressive markings, etc., they all identify him very soundly as a romantic composer, even though he has followed these structures of past composers and styles. So we'll get into our individual pieces a little bit more next week in more detail and a little bit more bio of Brahms, but for now, I'll turn it back to Ming.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you, Paul, and welcome everybody to the summer session of BCCO. And as you are aware, we are having 2 summer sessions, one in the month of June, every Monday in June. That's going to be focused on Brahms and a selection of his works, the Gesangpaarten, Liebeslieder Waltzes, and what's the last one? Is Waldesnacht. And we are really excited because when young conductors come to me and say, how do you learn a piece? The thing that we say to them is rather ludicrous. We said, well, you have to learn every note in the piece. You have to understand the poetry. You need to understand what was written around it. You need to understand all the genres of Brahms' works. You have to understand you basically have to understand all of his works plus all of his contemporary works and his place in musical history to be able to understand it. And so things like this, where we are bobbing around between various genres of Brahms, is really invigorating to me, because we really get a taste of what Brahms is all about. And yes, we know the Requiem. Everybody loves the Requiem. We sing the 4th movement of the Requiem all the time. And yet there are so many incredible works of Brahms. And Brahms was one of these composers that did not stick with a certain style. He was not a purely symphonic composer. He wasn't like Telemann, that wrote billions of cantatas, right? Telemann wrote more cantatas than Bach. He wrote thousands of cantatas, right? Haydn was the father of the symphony, wrote 104 symphonies. But Brahms wrote a little bit of everything, and we can see him struggling with his own inner turmoil, his viewpoints on life, and his struggle with the medium of how to write for orchestra. And then, of course, I just want to make notion that other summer series is going to be in August, all the Mondays in August, and that's going to be focused on 5 amazing female composers, living composers, who collectively wove a piece called Quilt Songs. And so we're going to be exploring how their different styles all get woven together for a single work. Again, symbolic of a quilt. Are they all going to be in the similar genre? So it's like a quilt that is harmonic and has harmony within its colors? Or is it going to be loud and brash with different textures sort of clashing against each other, and the different identities making the brilliance of the work? And that's what we're going to be focusing on. But for now, we're going to be focusing on these 3 works. We have 4 weeks to explore. So what we're going to be doing is spending 1 week focused on one of the works in depth, and this week focused on sort of a nice overview and starting to look at some of the parts of each of these pieces to show, what they're like. Now, in the text, I'm just going to start. We're going to do warm up with the repertoire so we don't take too much time from learning and playing and singing. But do you know of other songs? We're going to start with a Gesangpaarten. Do you know of other pieces by Brahms for chorus and orchestra without naming the Requiem? Yes, Julia points out Schicksalslied, the Song of Destiny, not to be confused with the Gesangderparten, Song of Fates. But right in the text, what other pieces? Does anybody know?
I'm trying to think if the Nenye are for piano or
Nenye, no,
chorus.
that is also for orchestra and chorus. And that is the Song of Lamentation, or like an elegy. So we have Song of Fates, Song of Destiny, Song of Lamentations. Anybody know the last one? It's the Alto Rhapsody. Now, the Alto Rhapsody doesn't have a title, but so there are 4 works that fall into this category. There's actually another one written for winds and brass and chorus, but that doesn't actually necessarily fall into our orchestra and chorus, but that is the Song of Burial. So we have, in order, Alto Rhapsody, which is about a poem by Goethe, asks for divine intervention for those that are lost. Schicksalslied, the Song of Destiny, the futility of man's destiny in a storm-tossed world, by Hölderlin is the text. We have Nenye, the Song of Lamentation, is the most hopeful, and it's a hopeful elegy. And then, of course, we have Gesangderparten, Song of Fate. Now, Song of Destiny, like I said, futility of man's destiny. Alto Rhapsody, asking for intervention of those who are lost. Nenye, Song of Lamentation. But Song of Fate, oh, that could be a wonderful fate. Maybe you got a great fortune and you're going to go on to riches and treasures and a rich life. This is the music that Brahms has for the beginning of Gesangderparten. So you have to think about what type of fate we might be talking about. That is not Bouncing Bunnies and Sunny Days. So we're going to let Julia talk about this when she does her introduction to this piece, but this is a very dire fate. And Brahms spent a long time talking about this is his representation of his life. He felt very lonely, very difficult to connect to other people, and especially people that he loved, like Clara Schumann, and those that he had crushes on and wanted to marry, in fact. And he eventually got into such despair that this work has such darkness to it. And I want to look up and start singing a little bit. So why don't we start at page 3. Page 3. Ignore the German for now, but what I want is the tenors, baritones, and basses to start us off. And we're going to sing it about this fast. And then the sopranos and altos will join. It's very dark. However, all the harmonies are very basic, as if you were singing a hymn. So I don't want you to get worried about the previous bombastic music, but I want you to find your place in the harmonies while you sing, both in the piano and the people that are singing Jack Tripp. So tenors and basses, here are your first notes. Altos and sopranos, they happen to be your first notes, but you have to wait a little bit until you come in. Basses, baritones, tenors, okay? I will sing it on do, 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 with heaviness. Ready? Here we go. This is the exact opposite of our summer days right now, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Beautiful. Sopranos and altos. End. Basses and tenors. Sopranos and altos. Not bad. Really not bad. What's really nice is that the sopranos and altos always follow the tenors and basses. Now, you see on bar at the beginning at rehearsal A at page 3, you have the timpani. That's what the PK means. Pauken means timpani. So your hymn is under this ominous orchestra. Basses and tenors. Do you see what I want you to do is put weight on the chord notes. Do, 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 do. Sopranos and altos, the same thing when we get to your part. Let's start at the beginning right there, bar 20 with pickup. And what I want you is to get into this dark, rich singing. Do, 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 with weight on the first and third beat. Ready? Here we go. Basses, baritones, tenors, alto twos, alto ones, sopranos. Right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Sopranos and altos. Basses and tenors. Sopranos and altos. Not bad. Why don't we do the altos bar 28 with pickup? Okay, here we go. Start on the same note, but then you change down to do, 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 do. Or if you're an alto, 1. Do, 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 do. Here we go. 1. Altos only, bar 28. 2, 3, and 4. Great. Now, what's different about this music than anywhere else before? Anybody? Bueller.
Longer.
It's longer. And the dynamics. Piano to forte. So when you have a crescendo like that, a terrifying crescendo, it needs to have a little bit more, the basses and tenors have this too, it needs to have a little bit more direction to it. Basses and tenors, can you start from bar 24? And then sopranos and altos will continue as we go, okay? Basses and tenors, bar 24 with pickup, basses, baritones, tenors, and then your next note is basses, baritones, tenors. Ready? 1, 2, and 3, 4. Now crescendo, 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 and here we go. Teet. And hushed. Match them. Now get ready. Here we go. Excellent. And go. And shush. It's bombastic. Now, if you've tried to read some of the text of this, this talks about the futility of trying to fight against your fate because the gods will just toy with you without a care for your life. So you can imagine Brahms was a little bit depressed mood when he wrote this. This happens to be the last work that he wrote for chorus and orchestra. He wrote it at the same time as Nenier. And Nenier, like I said, is a song of lamentation, but it's considered to be a more hopeful elegy. And he oftentimes wrote pieces in pairs, like the Academic Festival Overture and the Tragic Overture were written at the same time. And his statement was, while one of them laughs, one of them cries. And so this is very similar. Schicksalslied and Alto Rhapsody were written at the same time too. So we have these pairs, and you'll start to see pairs throughout Brahms's career. But it's going to be a really interesting piece. It's very dark. I want to just play, Ignacio, if you mind, playing what the orchestration of that first part is. And whereas the piano can be very bombastic, the orchestra does have a little bit more length in the line. But you can see it is a very, very dark and tumultuous piece. Here we go. Here's some of the sounds.
Here goes.
Great. Why don't we stop there? Now, this motive, by the way, the triplets, is a sign of fate in so many pieces. Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony. Ba, 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 da, 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 da. If you have, right? That's not technically a triplet, but you have that work that has three of those notes before the long note. And then you have Brahms in almost every single piece that references a fate, even the Requiem. So in the Requiem, when you hear that rhythm, ta 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 ta, ta 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 ta, ta 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 ta, you know now that that's what Brahms feel is that ominous fate that felt like to him was just tormenting him throughout his entire life as he tried to find joy and happiness in others that he couldn't, right? So let's go on. Wonderfully dark way to start the music. And I want you to look at the Liebeslieder waltzes, Liebeslieder waltzes. And we are taking only a few of these because there are a lot of these works. And these are sort of an overview of everything possible that could happen in love. And these are a whole bunch of poems that are written for SATB, and it could be for soloists, right? It could be, you know, a small group or often done as a choir and for two pianos. And so back in the day when they didn't have Netflix and Hulu and iPads and whatnot, people would get together around the piano and play four-hand piano, get together with singers or whatnot. And so we're going to be looking at three little pieces by Brahms. And these are going to be sort of a little bit of some of the emotions that you might find within love, which is to say all of human emotion. So we're going to look at, let's say, let's get sad before we get happy. Let's go start with number 5. And whereas before we had the tenors and basses starting, this time we have the sopranos and altos starting. I do have to note that this music was free online, which also means that there are some mistakes. So just be careful, okay? Let's start at the very beginning. And again, now what I want you to do is sing on new, and your first 2 pitches, and they mimic the orchestra, okay? Or sorry, the 2 pianos, 4-hand, 2 pianos. Here we go. Actually, no, it's 1 piano, isn't it? They can be played on 1 piano. 2. Okay, and then you come in. Here we go. Let's do the repeats. And this is a very short piece, but you'll see sort of a nice little overview of what this is about. Here we go. Sopranos and altos, here we go. Nice. Repeat. Sopranos and altos. Tenors and basses. Go on. Everybody. Repeat. End. End. Isn't that very sweet? That's very soft. And if you listen to the words, thou tender trailing ivy, why creeps so low thy branches? Thou damsel young and dainty, why is so sad thy mien? Say, thou glistening ivy, why is thou not heavenward rise? Oh, say, thou damsel dainty, why melts thy heart with sighs? And so a depressed lovers or whatnot. That's stilted poetry translation. That's really funny. Now, sometimes when we talk about music, I say, please don't be sing-songy. Don't go jump bum 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 bum. And yet, this is exactly the style of music to do that. What this music is, it's like a waltz, these love waltzes, right? But there's a very special type of waltz called the Ländler, and they have a lot of style. And you have to think of it going ta da dee ya da da dee dee, and then it becomes less boring. Let's try it from the beginning. From the beginning, dee 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 ya dee 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 dee. And just feel like you're singing a folk song as if you were, well, as Brahms would imagine, in a beer hall, drunk and depressed, singing about your lost love. Okay? From the beginning. Sopranos and altos. Here we go. Tee, tee, dee, dee, dee. don't you want to get a little bit, not strident, but think about if you're just singing and you go, "Ti, ti, ba, da, da," right? Let that sing, let that open up. You don't have the dynamics, but do you see what's in the pianos? So tenors and basses, ti, ti, piano, di, di, di. But look at the orchestra part, the pianos. Di, da, di, da, di. This now, if we were on tour and we all went to dinner and there was a piano in the room and we all gathered around the piano to sing, that's the type of tone that we should have. Free. It should be lovely, like beloved songs. I just want to make sure that the sopranos know that you see that the bar that you sing from the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just make sure that the last note is an E, right? That's where I'm playing the E, but just make sure that's the front note. Okay, so what I want to do is start from the beginning, and I want you to get a little bit swaying into the music, and I want you to get a little bit more, again, somebody wrote in drama. Christian wrote in drama. That's exactly it, okay? Here we go. And then sopranos and altos go, and... tenor spaces. Here we go. Repeat, so I can play the notes. Tenor spaces. Here we go, and open up. Sopranos and altos. And so Brahmsian. Here we go. Oh, do you see that? How wistful that is. Now, this is the fun part. Not only do all four voice parts sing together, but look at the dynamics. This is a page 11 bottom system. Sopranos, do you see how wistful that is? Can you make that really sentimental? Can we try bottom system, page 11, basses, tenors, altos, sopranos, and again, 4-part harmony. We call this homophonic, which means we're all singing together, like a hymn, right? And listen to it first. And then wistful. Let's try that together. Basses, tenors, altos, sopranos. Here we 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And sopranos. Oh, it's like it has so much character to it, doesn't it? Let's do that again. Starting from page 11, the second verse. Yum. And then we're going to do this part. Okay, so a tiny bit faster. Altos, sopranos. Okay, so pick up into page 11. So one note into page 11. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, and here we go. Yeah, that's fantastic. And it's almost like you're telling the story. And the more, again, drama and sort of character you bring into it, the better the story is, right? Right? So let's do that just one last time. Last system on page 11 because it's so fun. And again, and get very sort of, there's a difference between tightness and sort of a mobility to it. That's what we're looking for. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Moral. And you can hear in classical music, sometimes we say the tempo, keep the tempo. But you can hear how much we can play with this. And that's sort of characteristic of Ländlers and a lot of folk songs, right? So if I were to play it, I could play it. Right? I mean, that might be a little over dramatic, but that's part of the fun. Okay, now that is the sad song, Wistful Yearning. I think somebody wrote, yeah, Janice wrote Yearning. Well, Veronica said Yearning too. Let's look at number 8. Now, if I were to look at the left hand or the second pianist only, right? It has that bounce. Sometimes you might even say it's almost a little bit polka-ish, right? But yeah, pa pa un. But you look at the left hand. I'm sorry, the first pianist. I'll get that right one time. It's just so, it has such a lilt to it, right? Again, that's what a Ländler, the one word that you use to describe Ländlers is lilt. So let's look at this. Tenors, basses, tenors, altos, sopranos. Well, that's the same voicing as a tuning chord that Julian was using before. Obviously, I'm doing much slower than we did before, but we want to try to get ta da dee da dee bum pa dum dee 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 ba dee dee, and see if we can get again a swing to it. If you want to swing your music, like we say most of the times, don't do that, don't do that. This is the music to do that. Okay. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 1. Repeat and let's continue right. Sorry, let's go back. And what I want to do is do it a little faster. Do 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 pumpy dum putty dee dee pumpy dum. And I want you to again have that little lilt in it. It sounds a little bit like you're singing a church chorale right now. Do 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 do. And I want you to have a little bit more life. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Right, sorry. Okay. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 1. Repeat and 1. You know, it's so much fun. And again, Julia's going to grad school, but this is the type of thing that all the grad students will sit around a piano in a practice room and just kind of bash through, right? And likewise, that's the same sort of attitude you should have towards this. We can just bash through them. Now, let's try with Paul, and then what I'm going to do is transfer it over to Julia, who's going to do Vadasnacht. But let's have a little bit of playing with Paul. Now, Paul, which part are you going to play?
Whichever you prefer.
Why don't you play, since it's harder, why don't you play the top piano part?
I'll do my best. Thank you.
And I'll play the boom, check, check, boom,
Okay.
check, check. Okay? Now, again, the whole point of this is to have fun, to fall into the rhythm. Paul's not going to play your notes. I'm going to try not to mess you up, but we're going to try to do the first part of this. Okay? Your first notes? We're only doing this first page. We'll do the fun, weird harmonies next week, but or when we do this week. But here are the notes again. Basses, baritones, tenors and tenors, altos and altos, sopranos and sopranos. Okay, right? Yep. I'll give you one bar and then you come in. So you're gonna hear 1, 2, 3, 1, do, do, do. Okay, here we go. And we'll do the repeat. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3, Repeat. Excellent. That's excellent. Now, one of my favorite stories was, I think it was Shostakovich and Rostropovich. Is that right? Where they got together and they were just going to get together, play some music, and just drink, right? And they said they had such a great time. They tried playing Shostakovich's cello concerto, right? And Shostakovich on the piano, Rostropovich playing the cello, of course. And the first time they went through it, it was just so much fun. And then after one drink, it got even more fun. And then after the third drink, Rostropovich was playing the Dvorak cello concerto, and they just had a blast, right? And again, these are sort of, remember that Brahms grew up, even as a teenager, playing in brothels and drinking halls. And so this sort of folk song and the natural sort of music of the people, like Lendlers, like waltzes, street music, was really, really in his character and being. And so when we have music like this, we have Brahms, again, everything is tied to his emotions, but you can hear his upbringing and his character and all the things that influenced him. I don't want to sing through this, but we did have the depressed emotions in love. We had a more carefree version of love, and then Paul, do you mind playing maybe just the right hand, the top piano?
Oh yeah.
You want to play that?
Sure.
And you,
sure.
you can guess what emotion this is in love. Maybe not that fast. Actually, do you think we can try to play together?
Sure, let's do it.
No, I don't know if I can play it together. Well, let's go. Ta ba 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 bum bum ba ba bum bum. No, let's do that fast. Okay, just do the first. We'll do it repeat through. So when I mess up the first time, I can try to redeem myself the second time. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Here we and. But do you hear the music in the chorus? Ta 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 dum bum ba ba bum bum ta 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 dum. This is not sort of the carefree version love or the yearning of love. This is that anger that's there. What is this? No, there is no bearing with these spiteful neighbors, right? There's a lot of spittle there. So again, there's so much character in all of these. There are so many, and we're only looking at 3 of them, and they're just such fun. And that's sort of what I want us to get out of it, is that there's so much character to it. And if we're not having fun singing these, then it sort of lost the point. Okay, so and the last work, we did a work, Gesangdeparzen, that has orchestra to show the depth of color. We have this fun, which you can imagine everybody singing about the frivolities of love in their living rooms all together, laughing and having a good time. And then we have Vadesnacht, which does not have any accompaniment whatsoever. So Julia, I'm going to pass it to you to talk about Vadesnacht.
All right, thank you, Ming, and hello again, everybody. Oh, there I am. Click the right buttons on the screen. Okay, so open to Vadesnacht, our final selection that we'll go through of the summer here. And as Ming was saying earlier, it's so exciting to kind of get to know different styles and genres and different works by Brahms. They're all very different. And this one I think is very unique out of the other selections so far, because it has that kind of more lyrical style, longer phrases, slower, right? And it's softer most of the time, but there are some also loud dynamics too here and there. So Vadesnacht, what I actually want to do first is sing through the whole thing on a nice neutral vowel. So Paul, would you actually mind playing with us? And I'll conduct through. And let's see if we can also get Paul spotlighted here. Let me see. Aha. And actually, Paul, would you play like the first phrase from like 1 to 4, just so we can get a general sense of it at a tempo that's kind of like something like that.
Sure. 2, 3.
My microphone is freaking out. Okay, it sounds better now. The first thing you'll notice before we sing through sopranos, take a look at the 3rd measure and notice how you have that 2nd beat that you're singing while the rest of the voice parts, altos, tenors, and basses, you have a rest on that 2nd beat. So just be aware of that as we sing through here. Let's give it a try. Here we go. Okay, ready. Sopranos, here we go. Everyone else? Nice big breath. Here we go.
sorry.
All right, let's pause here for a moment. We're going to keep reading, actually, but just notice a couple things. Notice how the sopranos and altos, you have a nice duet here that you get to sing together. Similarly, the tenors and basses, you have a nice duet. You come in a beat later. Just a moment here. So we have this layering of entrances here. All right, let's give it a try right there on the measure 12. So altos and sopranos starting us off, and then tenors and basses joining us later. Here we go. Ready, and. That's it, keep going. Sopranos, altos, and tenors, basses. One, two, three, and now we have 2 beats of rest here, so we have 1, and. Sopranos. And 1, altos, tenors, basses. And 3, and a nice beautiful fermata at the end, and off. Excellent, nicely done reading through that, excellent. Now, notice here, we just made it to the end of the piece. You'll notice there's a repetition, right? There's a repeat bar, and we repeat back to the top, do the whole thing over 2 more times. This is a form called strophe. This is a strophic piece, which means that it's the same music that gets repeated with different text here. I actually want to read through some of the text. You might not have the translation in your music here. So let's learn kind of what we're singing about and see if we can get that kind of sense of the words from kind of what we just sang through too. So this is our translation. Gloom of the woods, refreshing coolness, be 1,000 times I greet. When I quit the throng of folly, oh, 'tis then thy rest is sweet. Mid the moss in soft recesses, dreamily I lie. There no care the heart oppresses, all my fears and troubles fly. Distant voices, far resounding, wake the heart to sweet unrest. While I breathe the fragrant stillness, mid these shadows I am blessed. World, thou canst not here assail me with thy fevered pain, where the pine sheds odors, balmy peace and holy silence reign. Here beneath the swaying branches, every murmur breathes repose, while the breeze with noiseless pinion, many a balmy blossom throws. Sing, ye birds, your tender ditties, lull the weary past, haunts of men in busy cities, oh, farewell, I rest at last. So similar actually to the Ballad to the Moon, for example, right? A kind of a walk through nature, a walk into the woods at night to find kind of peace and refreshing coolness and rest. And I feel like the music really does give us that sense. But here's the thing, as we'll do some singing in a moment again. But one thing that you always have to be aware of and thinking about when we learn a piece like this that's strophic, that has repetitions, that has different words, but in the same spot, in the same, in the same music, is that how do we make each verse different and unique and tell that different story that that verse actually tells? So that's something that we should keep in mind as we continue to learn this song and to learn the German too next week as we continue on with this. So let's turn back to the top. And sopranos, can I hear you first alone? You sang beautifully, but sopranos, sing with me, just on new still. Here we go. Ready, and. And. Lovely, excellent, nicely done. Now that breath that you have, and measure 3, right, between beats 1 and 2, think of that less of a breath and like a break moment as just kind of a continuation of the phrase. You do want to kind of break and breathe there for a moment, but instead of kind of pausing the momentum, think about still singing through. That breath is just a catch moment. So, no, 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 no. You're continuing the phrase. You're the only one that is singing on that beat. So make the momentum move forward. Soprano, sing with me one more time. Ready, and. Nice. And. Beautiful. Keep singing through. Excellent. Nicely done. Can we have all voice parts? And Paul, would you mind playing with us again?
Absolutely.
At the beginning here, this first phrase. Everyone singing together. Here we go. Ready, and. Sopranos, here we go. Beautiful, excellent, nicely done. Let's do this first phrase again. Notice the dynamics that are written in, and what word, and at least on that first verse, do you think the dynamics emphasize there? You can say it. Wonderful. Yes, wunderkühle. Exactly, wunderkühle, which means the refreshing coolness, right? That kind of the cool breeze, in a sense, the coolness of the woods at night here. So really observe, even though we're not singing on the German yet, know that that's kind of the sense of what we're singing about, even as we're just learning the notes here. And really lean into that downbeat of that second phrase. No, 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 no. At the same time, kind of come back. Everyone, one more time, this first phrase here. Here we go. Ready. Here we go, crescendo. Back down, excellent. Sopranos. Beautiful, lovely, nicely done. We'll keep going, I promise. One last thing on this phrase here. All of the dotted notes that we have, make sure that we're singing through them in a sense that we're not kind of holding back on the rhythm. So again, using kind of the soprano line, for example, although the dotted note does come in all of our voice parts in different sections. No, 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 no. So make sure that you're not holding that dotted note too long, but you're still kind of moving through that. Let's try that and let's move on after that. Here we go. One more time from the top. Ready, and. Sing through here, and. Excellent. Come back with sopranos. Sopranos, you got a note, sing through. All right, everyone else, keep going. Here we go. Excellent work, excellent. Turn back to measure 5 and take a look at the bass line. Everyone take a look at that together. And just listen for a moment. We have, what does that sound like? That sounds really similar to that first line of the sopranos, right? No, no, no. So you have that mode of coming back basses. No, no, no. And then you have it again. So kind of bring out that moment basses. That's really beautiful. You have the kind of sequencing in a sense that same motive that's happening twice in a row. Basses, can we hear you sing that phrase? Onto probably the top of the next page here, so singing through a little bit. So basses, sing with me. Ready? And here we go. And. Excellent. And I'll pause here. I promised we would go on, but one thing, excellent job on that beautiful lyric phrase. Now, actually, everyone go ahead and sing along with the basses here in your own register. And what I want us to focus on and getting that kind of nice lyrical connective legato sound, which I know we talk about very often. So just for the heck of it here, everyone hiss for me for as long as you can. Take a nice deep breath, not like, trying to fill up as much as possible, but a comfortable deep breath, and hiss and feel a consistent stream. So go ahead and get started if you haven't already. I hear some of you hissing. And as you're hissing, think about that connection, that constant stream of air where your hiss isn't wobbling, right? But it has a nice consistent kind of air pressure, stream of sound. So excellent. And we'll pause hissing for now. Nicely done. Now, the thing is, on the dotted notes, that's where we want to make sure that we continue singing through. No, 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 no. Otherwise, it can sound like no, 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 no. Or if we kind of fall back on the kind of support there for our voice, it kind of falls back and makes the phrase a little bit like you're kind of have a bunch of stop signs. You're trying to get out of the city, but you're just so many stop signs in the way. So basses, one more time, sing with me here. Sing through the dotted note. Ready, and. Sing through. That was gorgeous. Nicely done. Excellent. Can we have all voice parts right at measure 5 there? Same spot. So measure 5, beat 3. Excellent. Ready, and. Sing through basses. Altos. Sopranos. Because we have so many dotted notes here, let's actually just take the altos and sopranos together alone. So tenors and basses, pause for a moment. So altos and sopranos. Same thing. You want to keep always singing through all these dotted notes. Ta, 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 ta. Let's actually all do that. All voice parts just kind of speak that rhythm together. So I'm snapping the 8th note here. So here we go. Ready, and. Ta, 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 ta. Yeah, great. The 8th note still felt a little bit late. Ta, 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 ta. So really while you're singing the dotted note, be subdividing in your head, counting 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1. Let's try that. Ready, and go. Ta, 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 ta. Excellent. Better. Nicely done. So sopranos and altos singing through on new. Altos, sopranos. This is measure 12. Ready, and. Breathe. And 3. Altos down. That's a beautiful note, altos. Isn't it so wonderful? You get that beautiful kind of suspension moment. Do you see the decrescendo over that altos? Don't decrescendo too early, because then we won't be able to hear you, right? Like, we want to be able to hear that moment. So don't decrescendo too fast, too quickly. Make sure that we can hear that last note. All right, tenors and basses, your turn for your träumerisch. So this is pick up into measure 13. So basses, tenors. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. I rushed that half note. My bad. I was nervous about the next notes on the piano here. So make sure that tenors and basses here, I'll play the tenor part. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure that we're just holding that note for a little bit longer. We'll sing that again in a moment, but notice what happens here in these last two measures. Basses and tenors, you have voice crossing. So do you see how the tenors go C, D, E, while the basses do the exact opposite? E, D, C sharp. You have a fun voice crossing, which is amazing. So fun contrapuntal moment here. So love that moment. Basses and tenors, will you sing with me again from measure 15 here on the word Berg? Here we go. I will not mess up the rhythm again this time. Basses, tenors. 3, 4, 1. Excellent. Nicely done. Now let's sing that one more time. Sopranos and altos, thank you for your patience. We'll add you in one moment. Now, the decrescendo. Instead of thinking about getting softer, especially tenors as they're getting higher, instead of trying to think about getting softer dynamic here, kind of, you know, if you think about trying to get softer, what happens as singers is that you kind of automatically release support when you think about trying to get softer. But that's the opposite of what we need to happen. When you sing softer, you actually need a little bit more support than you think, right? I always think of forte and piano. Actually, like, piano is basically forte, but a mile away. So a little bit more support here. So instead of thinking about getting softer, think about making it more delicate. Think about the color of tone rather than the actual, like, volume, the volume of it. So more delicate as you sing through basses and tenors. Same section one last time. Basses, tenors. Here we go. Delicate as you finish out the phrase. Ready? And 1. And delicate here. Beautiful. Nicely done. That was gorgeous. Okay, let's back up to measure 12 now. That beat 3 of the measure. And Paula, if you'll join us again. And all voices. So again, altos start on beat 3, tenors and basses on beat 4. So it'll be altos and sopranos, tenors and basses, right? Kind of immediately after each other. Here you go. 1, 2. Rest here, which right now is going to be longer while I'm talking, but this is the longest rest that's actually in the entire cycle of songs here that this song belongs to. It's nice and long. Even though there's a moment of pause, there's obviously still music to resolve, right, of the chord that we just finished. So don't, just because there's a rest here, that doesn't mean to relax and kind of, you know, get loosey-goosey here and say, okay, we're not singing for 2 beats. No, there's still kind of tension in the sound of the chord that you just sang. So make sure that even though you're not singing, there's still a sense of motion forward, a sense of there's still music to be sung. So take a moment to kind of take a breath, observe that silence, but then sing through. Let's actually try that one more time from measure 12, and then we'll continue through. I won't stop us this time, waiting for those 2 beats in between. So measure 12 again. Here we go. Sopranos and altos starting us off. 1, 2. And. Excellent. That was beautiful. One last thing I want to point out about this last section here. So right at measure 17, take a look at the soprano line, everyone. The sopranos get to go, no, no, no. You probably noticed as you were singing, it's kind of a return to the music at the beginning. And then they continue, no, 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 no. It's that same motive again, just kind of going up a little bit. No, no, no. Then they have it again. No, 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 no. Just a little extra D in the middle there. So we have this sequence happening that's also supported by all the other voice parts. Beautiful kind of contrapuntal writing through this moment here with the sequence of this main motive here as we're kind of returning back to our last chord here. So this was a really fun kind of introduction into Waldesnacht, and as we continue to kind of look at this in the coming weeks, we'll take a great look kind of at some of the word painting moments as well in this beautiful song, and start to marry the idea of the text and the music and how it kind of represents each other.
Thank you, Julia. Can you hear? Thank you, Julia. Turn off to my mic, but so this is one of my favorite pieces because it simply shows how Brahms takes and completely upends harmony, right? This very beginning opening phrase, right, is very typical. I mean, we can find it almost in Bach. So simple. And then nobody knows what happens next. What? Wait, what? And that is a genius of Brahms. This was so popular during Brahms's time. This was a set of songs, a cappella works for chorus that he wrote. And this particular movement was the one that was the most popular. So if you're interested to sort of delve into why those harmonies are so astounding, first of all, Julia, part of your homework, or Paul too, can you identify what those chords are? Of course, we can say, yeah, of course, that's a D major in first inversion, and then we have A minor, which is not in the key at all, and then you have a suspension of an E minor chord, which, yeah, that exists in D major, but then C major. So part of the fun in looking at these harmonies is that when you have Brahms's music, like his symphonies, or like Gesangdebatten, or all these works of larger works, these are the harmonies that make Brahms sound like Brahms. So rehearsal does start at, what is it, 7:15? Is that right? No, 7:30. 7:30. And from 6:45, we are exploring some of the theory behind what makes Brahms sounds like Brahms. Then Paul at 7 o'clock works with us in terms of sight singing. And he said today, well, this seemed like you just did this really easily. I'm going to make it harder. And then Julia had a wonderful sort of background in history to not only Brahms, but we're going to be looking at these pieces in depth. So if you want to join us for what makes Brahms Brahms, we have these sessions beforehand. But also, we're going to go from oh, did you see what Jared just wrote? I never knew about this, but apparently there's a 1937 Trapp family recording of Waldesnacht. That's really cool. I don't think I've actually heard them sing as a group, but of course it's based on a real story. When I was in high school, I played the part of Rolf, the teenage Nazi, and I had long hair at the time, and they didn't think it was necessary for me to cut my hair, so I was Rolf, the Chinese long-haired Nazi. It wasn't the best typecasting, but it was a lot of fun. I got to sing. Rolf sings "I Am 17 Going on 18," but that's a beautiful song. I am 16 going on 17. But any case, as we all think of songs from Sound of Music, Paul is going to lead us to close out the evening with some fun sing-alongs. But again, we hope you enjoyed the first of our weeks of exploration into Brahms, and more so, just an excuse for all of us to get together and have fun and sing through stuff. So, Paul, lead us away with our sing-along to end the evening, and hope you had a fun time.
Thank you, Ming. All right, everybody, we're going to make a big shift here from Brahms to Elvis. I'm going to give Christian a moment to pull up the score for us because, you know, since we've done a little bit of work on sight singing tonight, let's take a peek at this piece from a sight singer's perspective. I'm sure most of you have heard this piece before, so we're just going to wait for the score. And since the score's not up just yet, who can tell me that interval? That's the first interval in Elvis's classic, Can't Help Falling in Love. Oh, here it is. That is a perfect fifth. Yes, exactly. I really believe in doing things in life that make us uncomfortable. It's a good way of growing. That's why I sing in public, because it makes me so uncomfortable. Here, let me close the window. You know, my daughter tells me, and she's only 8, she says, "Dad, you just shouldn't sing." So anyway, we're looking at this piece. We've been told that there is that perfect fifth to start. And notice Elvis, Elvis didn't compose this, but he knows music. So you can see there's a triplet in the third system. That brings us some drama on Falling in Love. There's the drama. You must have learned that from Brahms. So let's give this a read. We're going to go through it twice. There is a repeat, and the structure of the piece, it's mostly in F major, but there's a little section on page 2, third system, like the river flows. We drop into A minor, which is the relative. It's not the relative, but it is a related key. Very, very wonderful piece. And, you know, we had the Leave Us Lieder waltzes. We're going to have a little theme of love on these 3 songs. So here we go from the top. Now, Jack Trippers, I need you to sing out. Block me. And wise and say, only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. Thank you, tenors. And shall I stay? Would it be a sin if I can't help falling in love with you? And like a river flows surely to sea, darling, as it goes, some things are to be. Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. And once more with feeling. And shall I stay? color change and like the river flows slowly to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Take my heart, take my whole life too, for I can tell, falling in love.
And second ending.
For I can tell, falling in love with. Beautifully done. Now, tenors, thank you very much for that wonderful harmonization. You know, I could totally imagine Brahms singing that to Clara Schumann, don't you? If it were written, he totally would have sung that. Anyway, next piece. If you are of a certain age, you'll remember this album, released in 1983. This was written by Sting. This is from The Police. It's an interesting little song. It's a love song of sorts, but it's a little creepy, maybe. Every breath you take. So there is, just structure-wise, well, let's look at this opening interval. Every breath you take. That's the Jaws interval. So you know what to start with there. Also, you notice I've put this on the fourth system. I put this horrible looking Dalzeno sign. That's because they didn't put it in. If you go to the second page, you'll see that there's a DS at the top of the page, and we'll go back to C, where you go, oh, can't you see? Man, I wish it was a tenor, but we can't all be Sting, right? So we're going to start at the very top. Let's give it our best shot. 1, 2, and up. Here we go, and 1. Every breath you take, every move you make, every bond you break, every sound you shake, I'll be watching you. Not creepy at all. And 1. Every single day, every word you say, everything you take, everything you say, I'll be watching you. Oh, can you see? How my poor heart aches. Every move you make, every vow you break, every smile you take, every claim you say, I'll be watching you. And bridge 2, 3, 4. Since you've gone, I've been lost without a trace. I dream at night, I can only see your face. I look around, but it's you I can't replace. I used to and we're gonna head back. And 1. Oh, can't you see? How my heart aches. Every step you take, to the coda. Every move you make, every step you take,
I'll be watching you.
I'll be watching you. Wonderfully sung. Thank you very much. That was super high. I'll think about that next time, huh? So I got one more for you. I think you're gonna love this. We will do both verses of this. There is a perfect fifth to open us up again. That's kind of our theme interval tonight. So we have fifth, half step, and then we have a minor sixth, and half steps, and then the rest. You know this one. Yeah, let's just have some fun with this. That's the idea, right? And a one. And love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. This I tell you, mother, you can't have one without the other. Love and marriage, it's an institute you can't disparage. Ask the local gentry, and they will say it's elementary. Try to separate them. An illusion. Try and separate them. Come to this conclusion. Love and marriage go together like a horse and carriage. As a old my mother, you can't have one, you can't have none, you can't have one without the other. And thank you, everybody. I'll be here all week.
Thanks, Paul. That was fantastic. Now, I think the thing we need to remember is that as much fun as we have, that's what Brahms and his colleagues were doing too. They were sitting around the piano, and if they all kept journals, and the scary thing is that we read their journals now,
Yes.
right? And and we hear about all their dinner parties, and when Liszt sight read Grieg's piano concerto, showing off to some ladies, and it was just like sight reading from the score, and Grieg was ridiculously impressed, and all these really fun things. So we hope you have a fantastic rest of the week, but our goal, of course, is to have fun, to learn, to get to more about Brahms, and to have some fun all together. And hopefully the last few times that we're all virtual and that we can all get to be in person soon. But I love the energy from everybody here, and it's so much fun to have Julia and Paul with us this summer too. So
Thank you
in any case,
so much.
have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir. Bonsoir. Bonsoir tous.
Bye. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Log off.
Thanks so much. It was fun.
Night, y'all. Good night.
Bye, Patty. We like the Elvis. Janet. And Lisa. It's
So-
good.
You got on okay, Lynn? Are you back on Zoom yet?
Thank you all.
Oh, here we go. Okay, now can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, now I can
Yeah.
hear you.
I got on. I made one error. I forgot to click on go to BCCO rehearsal.
Yeah. So
I'm
next
just-
time you'll remember it because you
Oh,
forgot it
right.
this time.
I usually only have to make the mistake once or twice,
Hey, yay. Way to go.
but there's lots of other mistakes I can use.
Thank you, Christian, for a wonderful evening.
Yeah, that was fun.
No, I don't know what all you had to solve, but I think you were scrambling there.
Well, it was weird. Well, I only really had one issue when we wanted to start rehearsal. The pipe to Zoom wasn't working, and and then all of a sudden, after about 2 minutes, it started working. So
Weird.
it did.
I'm glad.
That was
Stunning.
good fun. And there was less. I think we solved some of
buzz?
the Zoom crackle.
Yeah, wasn't much.
It was a little bit, but
Well, Julia and Ming were mostly impacted, and I think it was their internet speed.
well,
You heard it in Jack
sounded-
Trip or in Zoom?
Heard it in Jack Trip.
Yeah, that's a different issue. Yeah, I'm talking about a different.
Regular Zoom.
It sounded like it was far away, though. It wasn't really too overwhelming.
In Jack Trip, the problem?
Yeah, in Jack.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very
Good.
successful.
Good
Successful.
night, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Lots of
Good
fun.
evening. Lots of good
A lot of
variety.
fun.
Thank
Really.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right. Stay well.
You too.
Yeah, you too.